brought together a group of 100 teenagers and we posed them this question. So we said, how might we make young people value water as much as they value their mobile data? So one of the things that is really important about the programs that we run is that we try really hard to make the questions we ask relatable to teenagers. So we know teenagers really value their mobile data. And we know that they really value water, but they see them in very different ways. And so this was a question to provoke that sort of thinking. And then what we do after posing that question is we take these teenagers through a series of 6 weeks of challenges or 6 weeks of missions. So we have 100 teenagers who all complete roughly 24 hours of work over the course of 6 weeks, which is all done through 48 30-minute missions. The work that they do is asynchronous, which means that they can fit it around their schooling, their extracurricular activities, so it's incredibly flexible, which again is a really important part of making this kind of program accessible. And it takes them right from immersing themselves in a topic or an idea, doing their own research, forming their own opinion about a particular subject, getting them to create a persona, to create a customer who they think they're trying to create a product for. It gets them to speak to people, go out and interview real people, so they're doing their own research so that they can validate the persona that they've created. And then we get them to come up with lots of ideas, lots and lots and lots of ideas. And then we get them to whittle those ideas down to the few that they think are really, really great, and then the one idea that they think is the one that they want to pitch. And then we get them to pitch their idea. We get them to market it. We get them to create an Instagram ad about it. We get them to pitch it to video. And through that whole process, they're building skills and confidence, which are all kind of really important for them to sort of take forwards. We try to make the content really relatable. So we do things like we get them to come up with idea poems, or we get them to do a barbecue pitch where they put themselves in the position where they're queuing up to get their burger at a barbecue, and they just have the opportunity to speak to someone for 30 seconds or a minute while they're sort of queuing up. And we get them to pitch their idea in those sorts of terms. We get them to create cereal boxes of their ideas so that they get used to kind of real sort of interesting marketing tools. We also, try to get them to celebrate things that sort of are really important through sort of entrepreneurship. So sort of failure and, quitting an idea if you're not really convinced that it's the right idea to go for. We try and teach them to be smart lazy, so not to spend any more time than they need. We give them 30 minutes per mission very specifically so that they don't spend more than 30 minutes thinking about something. So when they're coming up with ideas, they're only coming up with as many ideas as they can do in 30 minutes. So we try them to get them to sort of work really fast on those. And the results that we get are fascinating. So the squad that we pulled together a few weeks ago for this project, these are obviously teenagers that engage with water all the time, but they don't know. 80% of them didn't know who Northumbrian Water were at the start of this project. They're not engaged in water. They don't have any expertise in water. So, we get some really, really interesting results coming out of this. And one of the early missions that we asked the teenagers to complete is to draw a picture of what they think the world is going to look like in 50 years' time. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting because over 55–60% of the teenagers took quite a bleak view of what the world is going to look like. That's a sample of just a few of the drawings. There were probably about 15 of those, which are sort of showing, the world in some kind of a blaze or some kind of a drought sort of crisis. But also there are some people that are taking a very positive view. So the picture at the top is, showing a green networked city. Local city. So there are some really sort of interesting views and ideas that come out from this process. But we also get ask them sort of quite hard questions. So things that lead into things like behavioural science. So things like the intention behaviour gap. So what are their sort of core intentions of doing good things, and what are the things that are holding them back? What are the short-term behaviours that sort of let them down, and get them to sort of think about sort of those. We get them to do research. We get them going out on their social channels, asking their social networks questions. As I say, we get them sort of completing personas and sort of drawing an archetype of a person they're trying to create a product for. We get them coming up with lots of ideas through different sort of stimulus. So we try and this is something we call octopus ideas, where we try to get them to sort of come up with 8 different ideas based on a different set of stimulus. And obviously, we're doing that in a very quick-fire way, which means the ideas are, these teenagers are already unconstrained, but these ideas are even less constrained because we're sort of pushing them to come up with sort of as many ideas as possible. And then after they find those ideas down, they then come up with this one idea that they want to pitch. And this is a selection of Instagram ads that came out of the squad. I think that, and some of them are just beautifully simple, simple and brutal. So unfortunately, Nicholas, who couldn't be here today, this central ad was from him, which was this water leaderboard. And it's not a new concept to some of us that sort of work in the industry, but the way that he's articulated it is just brilliant, because it is just simple mechanisms. So I think language in that just sort of really tickled us all. And I think other ideas which are really great are so in the bottom right is a puzzle game, and this was an idea pitched by one of the squad members, George Yamamoto, and his whole idea was about trying to build a relationship between water and your mobile data through sort of puzzles and gaming, which was sort of fascinating. And of the 100 ideas that sort of we ended up with off the back of this super squad, it's really interesting. There's a real mix of different things, and obviously these are ideas that aren't well formed, they're not completed, but they're the nuggets of real interesting sort of insights, and the relationships that have been created as the squad members have been coming up with these are sort of fascinating. And Tim and I have already been talking about sort of some of the insights that have come out for this that will be sort of fascinating to pick through. But yeah, it's sort of fascinating that actually, a lot of focus on things like campaigns. As you'd imagine, there's a lot of focus on apps. So, again, people, these teenagers are used to sort of managing things through apps, so there's a lot of sort of focus on apps and how apps might be able to sort of help us sort of understand water and build that sort of different relationship. A lot of games, a lot of game ideas. Interestingly, one of the teenagers did pitch a festival. Thinks that we should do a festival, so I think you should think about that, Nigel. But some other lovely ones like art installations or cosmetic products that don't use water, and so there's some fascinating things that have sort of come out of that process. But also some interesting insights. So through the course of the super squads, we do both quantitative and qualitative sort of research with the squad, and you can see again similar tensions to we see in sort of other demographics. But 76% of the squad say they used water responsibly, but 85% take a shower, which is good, but then 43% of those take more than 10 minutes in the shower. So our kind of concept of how we're responsible with water is, obviously something that's sort of really interesting. But some really good habits being seen. 67% said that they wash their dishes in a bowl, which is obviously really good. Interestingly, only 36% said that they'd received any kind of education. So I think it's interesting insights into the outreach activities that we do and, how effective some of those are. But obviously, these are a few of the sort of insights that come out. What was really encouraging is that at the end of the squad, 58% said that they would consider a role or a career in water, which is good. So, there's some great talent who, are already sort of being engaged in this, which is obviously a massive part of, one really important part of what we do.